Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. And I really appreciate Linda Evans. I've learned that she's someone that takes initiative and makes good things happen. So thank you for making this happen today. I would like to start with a question to kind of see if this topic is relevant for us. Is there anyone here who has ever experienced, even remotely, a conflict? I think that means yes. What are your, can somebody just kind of throw out, what are some typical responses to conflict when it comes up? Anger? What? Blaming. Yeah, and usually, not always, but often the blaming goes somewhere else. And sometimes the blaming is turned internally. What other responses to conflict?
Self-pity. Self-pity.
Self-pity? Fear? Cops, okay. Help! Yeah, and I missed what you said. Fighting, yeah. Handcuffs. Yeah. So, do you have any ideas about how, maybe looking at the way you've responded to conflict in the past, sometimes you were probably pleased with how you responded. Sometimes later you thought, oh, I wish I'd handled that differently. But do you have some thoughts about how you would like to respond to conflict? Smile. Say that again. What? Peacefully. Smiles. Intelligently. Yeah, sometimes that seems to go out the window when we're suddenly faced with a conflict. Listening? Were you a plant in the audience? I was so pleased to see Ruth. I've thought of you often and haven't run into you in years, so I'm really glad you're here. Well, in 1983, we created Humboldt Mediation Services as a place where we could provide safe and effective means of managing conflict. So our vision was that we would staff mediation forums, panels with volunteers, and offer this to the community as an alternative to what we had seen sometimes at that point was violence. There had been a shooting south of Eureka and an argument between neighbors. We were aware of very unsatisfactory experiences that many people had had with the court system. We were aware that many people, and I've been one of them at times, wants to shy away from conflict, so we put up with things very unhappily, live in misery because we don't know how to deal with it. And recognizing this need for another way to deal with conflict, some of us in the community began looking at models around the country. And in 1983, there weren't very many. We looked at a program in New York, one in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and one in San Francisco. We took some of the elements that we really liked from each of these, but primarily we modeled our program after the Community Board program in San Francisco. They began in the late 70s and offered excellent training. And for those people who have been through our training that we offer here, which I'm not too humble to say I think it's some of the best training that is obtainable in any subject. It's directly a result of how fine the process and the training system was that was developed by Community Board Program in San Francisco. That was created by primarily with the vision of one person, Ray Schoenholz, who had been trained as an attorney, but he was still a very good person. I do need to turn down my lawyer jokes sometimes, I think. But Ray had a vision of how this would work in the community, but he did not attempt to impose this vision on the neighborhoods of San Francisco. He brought that vision to community meetings and had held numerous neighborhood meetings in the various distinct neighborhoods of San Francisco. And as that evolved, it developed into what they call the Community Board Program, the idea being that they would put together boards, panels of 5 volunteer neighbors who would work with other neighbors, usually with people that they saw on the street. Often they were acquainted. But whenever there was an issue over barking dogs, fighting children, parking issues, unkind words between neighbors, they could refer this to a panel. And some of the elements of the Community Board Program that we were particularly drawn to included the interdependence of the people who work in this. The volunteer panelists and the parties that came with their complaint sat in the same size chairs on the same level around the same table, and it was seen as a cooperative venture between these people in the community to explore the conflict and to find mutually satisfactory solutions. So let me emphasize that these mediators, and Community Board Program often use the term conciliators rather than mediators, because sometimes mediators was being used in a paralegal sense, and people weren't sure really what that meant. But these were people who were not seeing themselves as professionals, but as neighbors helping neighbors. So this interdependence and interreliance was very important. Bill's empowerment not only of the community, but also empowerment of the participants, so that everyone who participates in this, whether they've gone through the training and then are sitting as volunteer mediators, or whether they're coming in as parties to a dispute who are seeking help by some third-party neutral, all of these people gain from the use of the process skills in the mediation session. And we see this very much as an educational effort, as much that as a one-time service. People leave with skills that they can then use in other arenas of their life. Another element of Community Board Program that we really appreciated was the acceptance that people need a lot of time to get their feelings expressed and to get the sense from the other people in the room that they're being heard and understood. And in order to give that time, which is absolutely essential if people are going to feel like this is their agreement that they're drawing up and feel committed to following through on what they've agreed to. In order to do that, we give 2.5 to 3 hours to a mediation session. And I've never seen one conclude in less than an hour and a half. And that was only one time when the parties came in already empathizing with one another and expressing that to one another when they first came through the door. Normally, we have to work to help bring people to that point. Today, there's much more widespread support for mediation. 30 years ago, there was probably maybe one law school in the country that taught anything like mediation. And today, you'd have a hard time finding any law school that does not have a course on mediation and negotiation as part of their regular curriculum. Thank you to Linda for sharing this book with me. As I was preparing my remarks for today, I came across many points in this that really fit, and I'll make reference to that a few times. One was Gandhi's, a quote from Gandhi saying that the true function of a lawyer is to unite parties that have been riven asunder. And 25 years ago, I think I would have laughed at that. But today, there are many attorneys in our midst who do see that as their primary mission. I would love to be able to share the whole process that we use in these 2.5 or 3 hour sessions. And I hope that I'll have an opportunity to, because I hope many of you will enroll in the training courses that we offer. And I do have sign-up sheets on the table back there. If you, we're offering our 34-hour training for volunteer mediators in October. It'll be conducted in 2 weeks' time. And we have 3 one-day workshops coming up. So there are places where you could sign up if you're interested in any of those. And the March 19th is the first of the what we call the communication and conflict management workshops. But I do want to talk some about what a wonderful process this is that we've gotten from Community Board Program, and how with the skills, strategies, and assessment points that they taught to us, we also learn some attitudes about how to approach conflict. And so that's what I'd like to focus on this morning. And I've identified a half dozen attitudes that I think are essential and central to this. And I'm hoping that other people who explore this will add to this list too. The first of those is harmony. Very often when something seems discordant, as in a conflict, or it may be internal turmoil about what should I do, it may be international relations, often our response is to want to suppress something that's adding to the discord, and so that we can ignore that and find the peace of having only one voice expressed. And I think the musical analogy is a good one. I don't think it's possible, I'm not a musicologist, but I don't think it's possible to have harmony if you have only one note. And I don't think it's really possible to gain from conflict. And conflict is a rich opportunity. I don't think it's possible to gain from conflict unless you support all the disparate voices and give them enough acknowledgement and support that they feel worthy and that they can join in forming an agreement. And this is where accord comes from.